turn over to you. Okay. I'll just connect myself here to the microphone, and let me make sure I know how to do this. Oh, I do. Excellent. I'm Terry Schwartz. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the vacant land initiatives that we have underway and how they plug into this larger project. Cleveland, much like Philadelphia and Wilmington, have been dealing with vacancy for a long time because of this prevailing population decline. And maybe unlike Philadelphia, we haven't reached the point of stabilization yet. Population loss has been significant. Our peak was over 900,000, and we fully anticipate that our population will be below 400,000 in this upcoming census. Which isn't to say that population loss will continue unabated. I mean, the reasons that Cleveland became a city in the first place are still as true as they were 200 years ago. We have a central location, we have a wealth of economic and cultural assets, and we have water, lots of water. And so we figure that if we can get to a point of stabilization, we have a moment where we can begin this process of regeneration and redevelopment along a more sustainable pattern. Because like most older industrial cities, when the city was growing, we did so very rapidly and with very little regard for underlying ecosystems. And so we see our opportunity here of taking what you see in red. This is vacant land in the city of Cleveland. We have about 18,000 vacant parcels across the city right now. There's somewhere between 10 and 15,000 vacant buildings, depending on how you define vacancy. And also, we're demolishing buildings at a pretty rapid clip because this is a map of our foreclosures. Again, I could make this worse because I haven't updated it based on the last quarter of last year. But there are lots of foreclosures, and foreclosures rapidly turn into abandonment followed by demolition. The city's been demolishing about 1,000 houses a year, and last year we demolished 1,700. So our problems are large and have been longstanding, and clearly the global financial meltdown and the real estate crisis haven't helped Cleveland. They've really accelerated a problem that we've had for a while. Okay, so when we speak of green space in this map, much like Philadelphia, we do not have a deficit necessarily of parks and green space. We have a park system that was designed for a city of 1 million people. And so the thought of expanding that park system raises a lot of questions. One, about how to maintain it, but two, who are we building this park system for? So in the work we've been doing around vacant land, we've been focusing on a couple of areas. One being, can we begin to find those vacant sites, which you see in red, that either are adjacent to existing facilities or connect existing facilities as a way of expanding our green space network in the city and in the county in a way that we can manage and that makes sense given the realities of our population loss. But the important thing, though, is that, in Cleveland, it isn't necessarily more parks wherever we can fit them. We really need to focus on something more directed at a high-functioning landscape. Because even though we have a wealth of green resources, we have some major ecosystem challenges, which I'll show you in a second. So if we can find a way to expand green space in a way that improves water quality, improves air quality, helps us address urban heat island effects, reduce carbon emissions. These kinds of things will provide the financial and the ecological benefit that Cleveland really needs. So even though we have a lot of park space, we don't have a lot of mature tree canopy. This is tree canopy, mature tree canopy. There are more trees in Cleveland than you realize, but the black line is the city boundary. And you can see that the suburbs have done a better job of preserving large trees. Within the city, we have small street trees and some pockets of mature tree canopy. There are aesthetic challenges here. There are real estate challenges here. And there are pretty significant ecosystem challenges by the fact that so little of the forest city, that's our nickname, it remains as forest. And so thinking about ways that we can use our vacant land inventory to restore the urban tree canopy is a real priority for Cleveland. You guys are probably tired of all of these city presentations, but bear with me. 60 seconds of soil science, and then we'll be done with this. But the important thing for us, the discussion this morning about green space, wherever you can fit it, doesn't make sense in our context. When you're thinking about high-functioning landscapes, the where is as important as the what. So we believe in the what, the green space, but the where of where it fits within our city and our county is really critical from an ecosystem perspective. What you see in this map in yellow are the areas of the city where soils have the most capacity for infiltration. So you can do a rain garden or a bioswale wherever you want, but if you do it in one of these yellow zones, it's more likely to function the way that you want it to, because the soil will meet you halfway. Hydric soils. I'm not going to explain hydric soils except to tell you that hydric soils are the places where wetland function can either be created or restored. You can do a pocket wetland wherever you like, again, but if you do it in one of the blue areas, you're more likely to get the ecosystem function, the water quality benefit that you're hoping to achieve. And I'll just tell you, to be honest with you, in the lower corner, you're looking at the airport, and the upper area is one of the city's strongest commercial districts. So the likelihood of Cleveland, kind of giving up those economic assets for an ecological return are slim. But understanding the soil conditions is critical to making good decisions about where things should go and where they shouldn't. This is riparian zones. It shows rivers, creeks, and streams, and culverts. So it shows in the darker brown areas the place where a riparian setback should be maintained, and then the gold areas show the riparian zone, where if the water were allowed to do what water does naturally, these are the places where streams and creeks would expand to. The orange strips are the headwaters areas. If we're looking to restore urban tree canopy, you do it in the headwaters. You preserve and you protect the high parts of your watershed. You develop down below. That's how you get to a high water quality benefit, and it also helps improve the overall functioning of the hydrological system for the city. Then you put vacancy on top. The whole idea here is that by understanding these prevailing conditions, it allows us to sort our vacancy and make better choices about where to develop and where to conserve, where to build green spaces and where to build townhouses and other kinds of more traditional real estate development. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. One last thing about ecosystems before I turn things over to Nora, and that's hydrology. In this map, the light blue areas are natural or channelized creeks and streams. So the Cuyahoga is our largest river, and then there are little strips of the Doan Brook and the Rocky River that are water exposed to the elements. Everything in purple, though, is culverted. This is not something that's only happening in Cleveland. It's same as true in Philly, as well as Detroit and a lot of other cities, particularly in the Great Lakes area. When cities develop rapidly, you put water underground and got it out of the way so you could build on top of it. The results of all this culverting have been pretty significant in terms of a water quality challenge, which we face now. So if we map vacancy on top of hydrology and see the places where they intersect, we can begin to make better decisions about where not to redevelop. It didn't make sense to build on water in the first place, and so now that we don't have to, we can make a conscious decision using our city land bank and our county land bank to begin setting aside these parcels, either to daylight streams, which is very expensive, or to at least begin to restore surface hydrology through a series of vegetative strategies that can happen kind of parcel by parcel. We're not afraid, by the way, of the billion-dollar numbers in Cleveland. Our combined sewer overflow problem is going to cost us $2.5 billion to address. So if we can use some of those resources, obviously a lot of those dollars are going to go underground into big gray pipes. We know that. But if we can use some of those resources to begin encouraging more natural patterns of water movement through the city and through the sewer district service area, we can reduce the amount of gray infrastructure that's required and begin to create these kinds of amenities, which, over time, add up to a larger scale system. In a sort of parcel by parcel way, we can begin creating this green armature that promotes development, improves water quality, increases watershed function and wildlife habitat. And one important thing from a planning and urban design perspective, you guys are parks people, you know this. I mean, water only goes one place. Water goes to more water. And so all of these culverts ultimately lead to the Cuyahoga and to Lake Erie. And so the projects that Nora is going to speak to are the larger scale park and green space initiatives that we can connect everybody in the city to. Because if we create these little fibers, maybe not green fields, but green fibers, we create this mechanism for linking everyone in the city to our most significant natural resources in Cleveland. So with that, I'm going to give the thing to Nora so she can talk about the specific projects. Did I do it in 6 minutes?
You were great. Right, everybody?
I talked too fast, but I really wanted to keep it short.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I don't know what's worse, going last or going after Terry. So I swear I'm just as smart. I will be quick. You know, Terry brought us to Lake Erie, and what I'm going to do is just sort of tell you quickly about our response to the Red to Green Challenge, which incidentally in Cleveland was $1.1 billion. Which we were happy to take on, but we've instead submitted a series of projects that will connect people to the water through the city and into the neighborhoods to show that this is really a series of projects that looks at connections and linkages among the projects on the list, but also to other green and community assets in the city of Cleveland. We don't want to build, we don't want to program or plan any of these projects in a vacuum. Also access. For too long, I think we've designed and planned parks that don't really take into account who needs to access them, the underserved, the residents, the visitors to the city of Cleveland. These have an accessible theme throughout them. And then finally, design. We really feel that innovative, thoughtful design is really what will help us create a series of destinations and continue the growth in Cleveland. So again, starting at the lake with Canal Basin Park, which is the canal that connects, Lake Erie connects to the Cuyahoga River, connects to the Ohio and Erie Canal. This is thought to be this will be the terminus of the towpath trail. This is an 18-acre series of parcels at the river's edge that we hope will conclude the towpath trail, which is currently 110-mile bike and pedestrian trail that starts in central Ohio and Zor, Ohio, along the Ohio and Erie Canal. It's a phenomenal project, but it does not have its final mile. The towpath currently terminates just south of downtown Cleveland. We want to take it through to the river, connecting people then from central Ohio all the way up to the Cuyahoga River and then to Lake Erie. Going along the towpath trail, clearly with a 110-mile pedestrian trail, you have a number of neighborhood connections. So how do we make it so that this isn't a pedestrian trail in a vacuum? You connect it to the neighborhoods through old industrial routes, streets, through neighborhoods that have not touched the water directly ever. This is a port relocation. Currently, the Cleveland-Cuyahoga Port Maritime operations are going to move east. So what will we do with a 100-acre parcel north of Brown Stadium? The port is proposing a mixed-use development, commercial, residential. Planning has started and is underway. The Cleveland Rowing Foundation is a recreational and competitive rowing foundation that looks to acquire, I don't know how big the parcel is the Rowing Foundation is taking.
6 or 7 acres.
7 acres that will then spur additional commercial, recreational, and residential development around it. So it's the Cleveland Rowing Foundation. We hope a collaboration with area schools, with a skate park that's going in there, with a bike co-op, and then with the, again, nearby neighborhoods. Public Square redesign, we are lucky enough to have James Corner Field Operations as the designer for the High Line in Cleveland. Actually, he'll be in Cleveland on Thursday if anybody would like to join us for a Public Square forum. James, and actually Terry is on this design team as well, is taking Public Square, taking a good look at the center of Cleveland. So the sentimental, the emotional center of Cleveland, once home to huge, thriving events, is now underutilized, very unfriendly for pedestrians. It's not even that friendly to automobiles. They're looking at 3 really innovative approaches to Public Square. And these are generational projects. These are projects that, again, we want to affect Cleveland from now on, not just for a little while. This is very preliminary. This is a huge project that we really think could change the way people view downtown Cleveland. Rockefeller Park Strategic Plan is a plan that Parkworks took on. We just concluded it last year. And again, this is a key issue of access. This is a parkway, an existing parkway, but one that needs both a sustainable approach and obviously better neighborhood connections. If some of the neighborhoods adjacent to this park most affected by the foreclosure crisis, some of the poorest neighborhoods in Cleveland, and they have no access to this amazing greenway that needs a lot of help anyway. The Lake Link Trail is a proposed pedestrian and bike trail that would take you from the towpath through the flats to the river and then to the lake. Parkworks has recently acquired a 1.2-mile rail bed to continue this bike and pedestrian connection from the towpath through to the lake, providing access to neighborhoods and to residents who have no access to the lake currently, but also to visitors. And I'm going to just go to that. The Lake Link Trail would then continue on to Wendy Park, which is adjacent to Whiskey Island, which is a major lakefront green space that has huge access issues. The Opportunity Corridor, which is a 3-mile roadway that would connect some of 490, which is in the Slavic Village neighborhood in Cleveland, would connect that part of the city to University Circle, which is our Eds and Meds Center. It's also home to a number of our cultural institutions, the Cleveland Museum of Art, the Cleveland Orchestra. This project is also a good point for design. It could be a roadway, it could just be a straight shot, and that would be it. But if we can impact the residual effect on the neighborhoods that it'll go through, we're talking about 200 acres of the hardest hit neighborhoods, the poorest neighborhoods in Cleveland. What would happen if there was a thoughtful process around it, thoughtful design, and then good green planning? The budget. The joke on our team is we had roughly $660 million to look at acquisition, and as Terry points out, you could buy Cleveland for that. So we do not have an acquisition issue. The land is drastically undervalued. So our numbers are incredibly preliminary, as you can see. And it's not to make light of spending $5 million. Trust me, it's still a big M to me. But acquisition not being the issue necessarily, but also acquisition, good, thoughtful planning and design, and then operations and maintenance thereafter. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.